Good evening, everyone. My name is Janice Rutherford, and I am the 2nd District Supervisor for San Bernardino County. I'm here tonight doing our inaugural Facebook Live. I don't know whether to call it a broadcast or not, but I've been using that term. So we have questions that we've collected from constituents and Facebook users around the district. We're going to be asking those tonight, and to help me in that endeavor is Cameron Lurch. Cameron is a senior at Los Osos High School here in Rancho Cucamonga. She serves on my youth council. My youth council is made up of high school students from high schools all over the district. They get together on a monthly basis and learn about county government and current events, current affairs. They express their opinions, ask their questions. We try to teach them the soft skills that they're going to need to succeed in life, and then let them have the opportunity to do some job shadowing, to go out and see the kind of careers they're interested in. One of the things you might learn tonight is how much depth and breadth there is in county government. We have job shadowings that we can do with almost all of the students covering their interests. We haven't found one yet for the student who's interested in astrophysics. But as you're about to see, Cameron has some amazing communication skills, so we wanted to give her the opportunity to practice those skills tonight and see if she likes being on the air live. So she's going to be asking the questions that we've received beforehand and any that come in today. I wanted to start by talking with you a bit about what county government does. It's the question I'm most frequently asked out in the community, because a lot of people, they know what their city government does, they know when they need to call their mayor or city council, they know about congressmen, they know about state, but counties are kind of in between, and they wonder, what do counties do? So let me start by telling you the 4 functions of county government in the state of California. Our first is to provide municipal services or city-like services in unincorporated areas. So if you live in the mountain communities and you don't have a city, if there is a need, you have a pothole to be filled, you contact the county, and either through our public works department or special districts, we help fill your pothole. We don't provide the same level of services that cities themselves do. For example, in San Bernardino County, we do not have funding to run parks and recreation programs. We don't have neighborhood parks like you have in a community. We have large regional parks. Those charge for parking and charge an admittance fee. They're usually used for large community events, corporate picnics, family reunions, though you and your family can go. My family loves to go to Glen Helen and fish. We also do that a lot up at Lake Gregory. So there's special events that happen at those rather than the neighborhood parks that you would just go play with or take a walk at in the evenings. The second area that county governments in California focus on is public safety. We have sheriff's department, district attorney's office, public defender, probation department. We run the county jails. Our deputies help out in the courts. So that kind of public safety issues are handled by county government in California. But it's one of those areas where the lines in California get real crisscrossed, because in addition to the Board of Supervisors that sets the budget and some policy goals for those areas, we have independently elected officials. We have a sheriff, a district attorney, we appoint a public defender, and the presiding judge play a real important role in all of those services. It makes for a bit of a mishmash in California, but we do a really good job of it here in San Bernardino County. The third area of county government is regional backbone infrastructure. The physical things like county flood control channels, but also regional services, register of voters to run elections, the assessor's office to assess your property, the tax collector, treasurer to manage the county's money and to collect your taxes and distribute those taxes to the other entities involved. So a lot of our departments fall into that category, veterans affairs departments, and a whole long list that we'll be happy to post below at some point so you can see the great variety of things the county does. The fourth area is actually the largest part of the county budget. It takes up about 75 to 80% of the money that comes to the county from the federal and state governments, and that is our health and human services. These are not discretionary programs. The county is simply administering them by formula that the state or federal government set. Think of this as general welfare, EBT cards for food stamps, foster care services, even running Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, which is the way the county provides health care for medically indigent adults. So that's the biggest part of our budget, and the biggest number of county employees are involved in those health and human service activities. In addition to those 4 constitutionally mandated functions of county government, we're also involved in regional activities like economic development and transportation planning, a lot of other things that you as residents say you want to see us accomplish here in the county to create the quality of life that makes your investment in a home or a business and the time you spend here much more valuable and high. So let's get on to some of the questions that we've received. I see we've been joined by Upland Mayor Debbie Stone. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for signing on tonight. Appreciate your being here. One of the most frequent questions that we were asked prior to this event tonight was San Bernardino County's role in the federal lawsuit against California's sanctuary city laws or sanctuary state laws. And so I want to talk with you a bit about that this evening. I had a long conversation today with Sheriff John McMahon because when we talk about those sanctuary laws or the effects of SB 54, those really are in the criminal justice system and in the public safety category and under Sheriff McMahon's purview. Sheriff McMahon wanted to emphasize that his deputies are still allowed to communicate with federal immigration officials when they're releasing inmates who have been charged with serious crimes. And often the immigration officials know a lot more about the person in custody than even our local deputies do if they've been charged with crimes elsewhere or depending on the nature of their immigration status. So the sheriff acts within the law, within the confines that the state has put him in to administer the laws fairly. One of the things he has is an inmate locator, which lets any member of the public, including immigration officials and including victims of the crimes, most importantly, they can be notified when an inmate is, or someone in custody is being released. And if there is any other law enforcement entity that needs to get that person when they're released from our jail, they can find that notice or receive the text from the department saying when that's going to be, and they can take that person into custody. It is a popular point of discussion around the water cooler these days, but let me put it in a little bit of perspective for you. In the last fiscal year, we had 83,000 people in our county jails arrested or being held there, 83,000. 1,100 of those were of concern to the immigration officials. They ended up taking 250 of those into custody upon their release from county facilities. So we really are talking about a very small number of people, but the sheriff is keenly aware of this, and he asked me to express to you his interest in hearing from you, his desire to answer any additional questions that you have. So if you'd like me to get a message to the sheriff for you, I'm happy to do that. I think the Board of Supervisors, my colleagues, and I concur with the sheriff that what we need is for the court and probably the U.S. Supreme Court to take up this case and decide it as quickly as possible. There is a big conflict now between California state law and federal law, and our sheriffs and our public safety system is caught right in the middle of that. We need to get the issue resolved so that the sheriff knows how to do his job within the law that's being applied. We have, I think, the best sheriff in the United States. It is an honor and privilege of mine to serve with him, and I know he wants to do the very best by all of you and keep you as safe as possible. He'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have, so again, feel free to post comments or questions below or send them to me, and we will pass them along to the sheriff. So that's what I wanted to start from the beginning. Let's see what Cameron has for us now.
All right, Amber from Rancho Cucamonga asked, should the county land north of the 210 that the city of Rancho Cucamonga plans to annex be developed into homes and businesses? And if the city does not annex, does the county plan to develop the property?
All right, Amber, thanks for that question. At the north end of Rancho Cucamonga, near Los Osos High School, where Cameron goes, there's about 1,200 acres of county flood control property that is now surplused. That is, it's no longer needed for flood control purposes. And that's not just as a decision of the county, that comes down from the Army Corps of Engineers and such at the federal level. So we've got this surplus land that becomes an asset of the county flood control district. However, that land is not yet in the city of Rancho Cucamonga, but clearly anything that happens to that land affects the city much more than it affects the county because it's surrounded by the city. So if anything is built or developed there, those impacts are going to be on city roads. If they build homes there, it's going to be on local school districts. All of those impacts happen to folks here in Rancho Cucamonga, which is where we're coming to you from tonight, by the way. So it's been my opinion that the 1,200 acres should be annexed by the city of Rancho Cucamonga into the city boundaries, and the future use of that land should be decided on by the city council, your elected body here. I know right now the city is undertaking a process to collect your opinions to find out what people want done with the land. And there's been a range of suggestions. There have been some folks through the city who've suggested a high-density project with smaller lots and lots of homes. There have been folks who have gone to the extreme opposite and said the land should be completely open and not developed for anything. What I hear from most people is that they would like the development there to look like the surrounding community does now, so like the homes that are already up in that neighborhood. And there's also been a dispute about whether commercial development should be allowed up there, whether it should be of a larger scale or whether it should be just to serve any homes that are built in that neighborhood so that folks don't have to drive to get to the grocery store, that sort of thing. Those are local land use decisions. I leave that up to the City of Rancho Cucamonga and the process they've developed. If ultimately the City of Rancho Cucamonga came to the conclusion that they want that land to be not developed, I would be happy to represent that position on the Board of Supervisors. But the decisions about land use are made by the entire Board of Supervisors, so it would be at least 3 members of the Board of Supervisors who would have to reach that same conclusion. The contrary position to that is that these 1,200 acres have a value that is an asset to the County of San Bernardino Flood Control District, and to do future projects that help improve public safety regarding possible floods. That land could be sold to the highest bidder at auction, and then that money could be used for those public safety projects. And that is the balancing decision that ultimately the Board of Supervisors will have to make after the City of Rancho Cucamonga decides on the land use for that project. So I hope that answers your question. If you have any more comments or concerns below, let me know below, and then get your opinions about how you want to see that land developed to the Rancho Cucamonga Mayor and City Council, because they'll be the ones ultimately making the decision. Cameron, next.
All right, Kathy from Etiwanda asked, do you support the plans to add toll lanes to the I-10 and I-15?
I don't, actually. I am not a fan of the toll lane proposals, and I voted against them on the County Transportation Authority. I wasn't there for the very last vote, but it was approved overwhelmingly. I think there were only 3 or 4 members of a 29-member board that opposed the projects. Listen, none of us like sitting in traffic, and it's horrible. Our 10 corridor from the LA County line out to the 15 and then out through Redlands, we have 260,000 vehicles a day on that, 20,000 big rig trucks on top of that. And that number is only going to grow. We are increasing traffic by about 20% per year. We've all sat in that traffic. We all hate it. We all want to see more lanes on the freeway. In the state of California, there's no other way to build more lanes. There's no funding available. In this county, voters have approved half-cent sales tax measures under our own volition to fund specific transportation projects, but we don't have any money in those funds left to expand the 10 or the 15. So the transportation planners brought forward this idea of toll lanes that would expand the freeways by 2 lanes in each direction. I love the idea of having less traffic in the general lanes. I hate the idea of anyone having to pay to use freeways. I've heard from a lot of businesses who are very excited about the idea of toll lanes because of the predictability of being able to move their employees and their goods faster. They're willing to pay to use the toll lanes for that predictability. I've heard, though, from even more individuals and residents who think that the price that it's going to cost to drive from here into Orange County or into LA is just going to be so prohibitive that they won't be able to take advantage of that. But the real reason for my no vote is when I look at the financing plan for these projects, and it's a huge amount of money, $1.8 billion to add the 2 lanes between the LA County line in Montclair and out to Redlands, $1.8 billion. I just don't think the financing proposal is strong enough. I'm concerned that they haven't looked at all the factors. I've read too much about other projects around the country and the world that have gone bankrupt, and then that would leave the taxpayer with the tab. So I'm real skeptical about the financing plan. That's the nature of my opposition to the proposals. But it is moving forward because it had an overwhelming majority of support at the County Transportation Authority. The plans for the 15, let me get the dates on those. No, sorry, don't have the date right here, but the board is still considering whether to add those lanes from the 10 freeway or about Duncan Canyon north into the desert. So those plans are still evolving. If you want more information, let us know and we will get that out to you.
All right, Sydney from Fontana asked, what can the county do to ensure more dogs are adopted from its animal shelters?
We want more dogs adopted, we want more cats adopted, and because San Bernardino County is so huge and so diverse, we also get a whole bunch of other animals. If you've ever been out to our animal shelter, we have horses and tortoises and bunnies and all sorts of amazing animals out there, but dogs and cats overwhelmingly, and some are very sad. We all wish that pet owners would be more responsible and spay and neuter their animals. We try to support and encourage that at so many of the free spay and neutering events that we host around the county all year long. We really need to work hand in hand with the rescue organizations. There are hundreds of them, and they do an amazing job of trying to get these animals out of the shelter and fostered and then into the hands of loving forever families. That's what we all want to see happen. I've talked to many of those rescues over the past couple weeks, and I have an idea I'm actually going to be recommending in this coming county budget, which the board will be doing some workshops on in May, and then the final budget vote in June. I'm going to ask for the creation of a rescue coordinator position within our Animal Control Services Department. This would be someone who can work hand in hand with those rescue organizations to expedite the process, to have all the paperwork done so that when the rescues come to pull the animals, everything's in order and they can just get them and go, and also make sure that the holds are done properly. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get that position online as part of next year's budget, and that we'll be able to see a greater increase in the dogs and cats being placed. If you're interested in adopting for a forever home, our shelter is in Devore. We also have some amazing animal shelters around the county, one in Upland, one in Rancho Cucamonga, that would absolutely love to fix you and your family up with a pet that you can bond with and love. We recognize that our shelter in Devore is not as good as it needs to be. It's certainly not as good as the ones that have been built in those cities that I just mentioned. So over the past couple of years, the Board of Supervisors has started a savings account. We've saved about $10 million to build a new shelter. We're trying right now to figure out the best location for that. It probably isn't in Devore anymore. That's not real centrally located for the population. So we're still trying to figure out the best valley location for that, and then we need to save a little more money and get the planning together and get that happening.
All right.
What's next?
James from Running Springs asked, I was told there were only 2 sheriff deputies patrolling the mountain communities at any given time, and that when a deputy has to take someone down the hill to jail, it leaves us with only 1 deputy. Is that true? If so, what is the sheriff doing to correct it?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of true. Usually in the mountains on each shift there are 2 to 3 deputies. That can change for a variety of reasons, but that is about the average. I spoke with the sheriff about this earlier today when I got the question, and the sheriff wanted me to share with you that he has worked with the board over the past couple of years to add another 25 deputies back to patrol in this county to try to service the whole area. The problem is we've got 20,000 square miles, much of it under the control of the sheriff's department for patrol purposes. And think about this, the Barstow station covers 9,000 square miles and still has only 2 to 3 deputies on patrol at any time. The mountain area is much smaller than that. We don't have enough deputies. The sheriff recognizes that. The board recognizes that. We're trying to take some steps to correct that, including beginning to fund an overtime fund so that we can fill some of the vacancies that have been created. To that end, if you know anyone who wants to be a sheriff deputy, we are recruiting, and we're always recruiting to go through our academy. We're looking for good people who have a good driving background and obviously a clear criminal record and have the right attitude about public service to be involved in our sheriff's department. As far as a deputy being taken away to transport a prisoner down to the county jail, yes, that does happen, but the sheriff also noted that they make arrangements sometimes to meet a deputy from the central station part way who can take custody. They have the watch commander who can go out and do patrol while that deputy is off the mountain, and they also really try to schedule that well so that they're not taking away from patrol services. But we recognize we don't have enough deputies. We'd like to get some more, and it really is a matter of funding.
All right, Robert from Lytle Creek asked, why can't we get rid of our current polluting highway system and create a zero-emission transportation system that utilizes electric vehicles similar to slot cars?
Slot cars. I love that idea. Robert, when I actually got started in public service, I worked for a gentleman by the name of Bill Leonard. He was in the state assembly. He was vice chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee. And he hired me way back in 1987 to organize some hearings of the Assembly Transportation Committee to look at 2 things: a high-speed train between Southern California and Las Vegas, and alternative fuel vehicles and alternative transportation technologies. And at that time, I remember studying and hearing about the ideas for for smart roadways, roadbed sensors that could communicate with cars, make them stop instantaneously, allow them to drive closer together, and then do automatic braking. The kind of things that many years ago sounded truly like science fiction, but we now hold that technology in the palm of our hands. So we can absolutely move in that direction, and I believe that is the future. It's just a darn expensive future. We have to retrofit all of our roadways. We have to retrofit all of our cars. We have to have confidence in the reliability of the software. And as we watch the debate develop with the self-driving cars and the recent tragedies with people dying in autonomous cars, there are still concerns about that. We're a society not really comfortable completely with that yet. But we're going to get there, and I bet that my kids or their kids are going to be driving on the kind of roadways that you're envisioning. We're working toward that. We're funding that kind of research, and I hope we get there quickly.
Mike from Rancho Cucamonga asked, what do you think about the Orange County Supervisor's comment that the homeless from the county should be placed in the high desert? And what is the San Bernardino County doing about its own homeless issue?
Well, I don't think I'll say exactly what I think about my Orange County colleague's comment. I would say it's rather irresponsible. Look, every community in Southern California, practically every community in the United States, has a homeless problem right now. Some communities admit it, embrace it, and are working toward fixing it, and some try to sweep it under the rug and ignore it. Orange County has had a head-on confrontation with that problem in recent weeks. San Bernardino County has been a little out in front of dealing with the problems. I'm not diminishing the problem, and I'm not saying we've solved it, because we haven't by any means. But we're trying to take care of the homeless that are from our communities, that are in our communities, and we're not interested in being the dumping ground for other people's problems of homeless individuals or anything else. Every community needs to take care of their own. Here in San Bernardino County, we began a model designed by Philip Mangiano, who's the former head of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. He came out here, he met with the Board of Supervisors, he talked with our professional staff, our volunteers, our communities, and helped us figure out how we could start helping homeless constituents. We began with veterans, homeless veterans in this county a couple of years ago. We identified about 400 of them, and the board made a very firm decision that it was not acceptable for anyone who had served our country to be homeless. We made that resolution in July. By about Thanksgiving, we had housed those 400 homeless veterans. By the end of that year, we had housed another 100. And we have a system in place today where if we identify a homeless veteran and they want help and services, we can get that for them the same day. Now, it's not a perfect system because not everyone who's homeless wants the services, and we don't have enough housing for our homeless veterans or homeless families or homeless mothers, anyone. We need more housing made available to the homeless in the community. Now, for our Veterans Project, we worked with landlords. We actually went out to groups like the Apartment Association and private property owners and asked if they would partner with us. They were willing to do that, but they were concerned about some of the legal and financial implications. So the Board of Supervisors set aside $1 million to act as a backstop. If anybody's property is damaged because they've taken in a homeless veteran, we would use that so that their own insurance doesn't take the hit. We haven't had to draw on that fund because when we get a homeless vet who wants those services, we are able to wrap around services to them to make sure they're getting the mental and physical health support with food and clothing and personal care, that they are grateful and they're able to become well, and they don't damage the properties that they're given. We're trying to take that model now and expand it to other populations of homeless. First families, mothers with children who might be on the streets or who might be couch surfing or doubling or tripling up in homes to get them into a place of their own. And we'd like to ultimately expand that to the chronically homeless. But we've got our own homeless population to deal with. We are not interested in taking on homeless from Orange County or anywhere else. And we encourage other folks to come up with the kind of solutions that our communities here are pursuing to help with the homeless. Just seeing that there's a comment from Amber about the 1,200 acres that we spoke about a few minutes earlier. She asked if I would support the 1,200 acres being preserved. I assume by that she means not developed at all. And as I stated earlier, I believe that the use of that land should be determined by the people of Rancho Cucamonga and voted on by their city council. So that is not my decision to make. That is a decision for the people of Rancho Cucamonga to make. And they're undertaking a process right now where they can decide whether they want want it completely preserved, whether they want it developed like the surrounding communities, whether they want to do something completely different. I don't want to impose that decision at all. That is a local decision that should be made here in Rancho Cucamonga. What's our next question?
All right, Andy from Upland asked, do you support the implementation of an indirect source rule by the South Coast Air Quality Management District?
So I am San Bernardino County's representative to the South Coast Air Quality Management District. Every county sends one supervisor. Groups of cities around Southern California send city council members. We have appointees from the state by the governor, the assembly speaker, the Senate pro tem. We end up with a body of 13 people who decide on the air quality policies for the South Coast Basin, which is one of the most polluted areas in the United States, extreme non-attainment areas. We all know we have too much pollution in Southern California. I'm an asthmatic. I feel that pollution all the time. I grew up here. I know that I felt it a lot more growing up as a kid. Our air has gotten tremendously cleaner in the last several decades. There were most days in my childhood where you could not see the San Gabriel or San Bernardino Mountains, even when you were just a little bit in front of them. So the quality of our air is better, but it's not as good as it needs to be for asthmatics, for children, for anyone. We can do better. The answer, the solution to that problem is in technology. It's how do we get cleaner burning vehicles, cleaner burning heavy duty trucks, cleaner burning locomotives, cleaner burning airplanes. Those mobile sources contribute about 80% of the pollution that we're still experiencing here in Southern California. See, the South Coast Air Quality Management District has, over the past couple decades, undertaken regulations and policies and incentive programs and partnerships and education efforts that have cleaned up most of the rest of the sources of pollution. So automobile spray booths and the paints and lacquers and thinners and consumer products that you use in home and so many different cooking technologies are now so much cleaner than they used to be because of those changes to the stationary sources that are under the South Coast's control. But the mobile sources, the things that move, those are not controlled by the South Coast Basin. And so some folks have suggested that we kind of get around that problem by creating an indirect source rule. That is by taking things that are built, warehouses, new housing developments, shopping malls, really any new development, and saying that the builder of that development has to restrict the amount of pollution that can come from the mobile sources that serve that development. So it's an indirect way to get at the pollution. The board is currently debating this. We've had it on the agenda the last couple of meetings. We haven't been able to actually vote on the matter yet or even have board debate about it because we've had board members absent. So that is on our agenda for May, I believe. That'll be the first week of May. I'm not really allowed to express an opinion on that since I have to hear testimony and make a decision based on that testimony at the May meeting. But it's a matter of how do we balance our economic growth and the strength of our jobs, recognizing that the single biggest contributor to the health of a child is whether that parent is employed steadily. How do we balance that with the need for folks who own businesses to not pollute as much? And there can be a healthy balance, and that's what we've got to find. I go back to what I said earlier about relying on technology. We know that it's possible to have cleaner burning engines. I mean, how many of us now are driving clean burning vehicles, hybrids, or completely electric vehicles that we didn't even know existed a couple of years ago? The technology for our personal cars has gotten much cleaner. We're beginning to get to that technology in big rig and heavy duty trucks, but we're not to scale into market with those yet. They're coming, they'll be here in a couple of years, and that's going to be probably the biggest difference in our Southern California air quality. A concern there, though, is how do the small truck owners, not small trucks, but the smaller businesses, the folks who only own 1 to 5 trucks, how are they going to afford that brand new technology? We don't want it to put them out of business. We don't want their kids to stop having health care because they can't afford the trucks anymore. So we're going to have to incentivize people to acquire and use those new clean burning vehicles. It's an expensive prospect. It's a complicated prospect. California has ways to do it. We have programs in California, the Cap and Trade program, that's generating $2 billion a year. Now, unfortunately, most of that is being spent on the super speed train in the middle of the state. And the money goes to projects predominantly in Northern California. It's a shame because 67% of the state's disadvantaged communities are right here in Southern California, yet we get less than 30% of that funding. So we're paying higher gas prices because of cap and trade. We're paying higher home electricity bills because of cap and trade, and we're not seeing the benefit here in Southern California. It's a shame.
Anthony from Rancho Cucamonga asked, do you support the sales tax measure the Air District has proposed to raise funds for clean air projects in our region?
You know, it's not even really a proposal at this point, Anthony. It's an idea that has been brought to the board. It's being discussed. A gentleman by the name of Denny Zane out of Los Angeles thinks that there should be a sales tax that could fund the kind of technology that I was talking about, the kind of partnerships with businesses. The board did fund a poll that was both educational for the people listening to it and gave them the opportunity to express whether they wanted to pay higher taxes to fund cleaner air programs. There was a slight majority of folks who did want to do that. As I've talked about it here in San Bernardino County, I've only heard one person tell me they're willing to pay a higher tax. So I'm open to listening to the views of folks out there. You can post here or send me separate emails. One of the things I'll note is that I mentioned earlier in this discussion San Bernardino County's sales tax for transportation. That measure was approved by over 80% of the voters here in San Bernardino County because when the Transportation Board at the time suggested the tax, they included a list of very specific projects. So you knew that if you voted for this tax and were paying this tax, that you would then see this particular project built in your community. And the board at the County Transportation Authority has been really diligent about sticking to that plan. The Air Board would need to commit to the same thing. If they think that people are interested in a tax, they're going to have to lay out exactly what the money would be spent on, and there has to be a very clean link between the expenditure of that funding and the achievement of less air pollution. It's going to be a really tough bar to cross. I'm interested in everybody's opinion, but if I had to vote today, I would not be supporting that tax.
Susan from Upland asked, I've read articles in the Daily Bulletin about child sex trafficking being an issue in the San Bernardino County. Yeah. What is or can the county do to prevent this horrible crime from happening?
Human trafficking, sex trafficking, absolutely devastating consequences to individual lives and detrimental to so many in our community. And really important for us to raise awareness about this issue and to fight back against those who would steal our young people, our most vulnerable, and traffic them on the streets. The Board of Supervisors, myself, has funded an anti-sex trafficking unit within the District Attorney's Office to allow for prosecutors to really go after the folks who run these sex trafficking operations. And that's so important. We can no longer blame the young woman or young boy who is being trafficked. We recognize now that they have been groomed, they have been stolen from their families, they have been trained in sex work, and they do not have the freedom or ability to get away. They face extreme violence and threats if they try to fight back or get away. So we need to support those young people. We need to identify them. We need to identify those who are vulnerable and are being groomed while they're in the process and get them out. We have a great organization. Let me find the name here. I only know it by the acronym, and that's not going to do it. It is called CASE, and I'm not finding it in my notes. County Against Sexual Exploitation. We'll get the exact, they'll write a note for me and tell me what it is exactly. But it is both county staff, public safety workers, nonprofit organizations, faith-based folks getting together to help those. Coalition Against Sexual Exploitation. Coalition, thank you. And that is a group that meets regularly and figures out strategies to address human trafficking and how we can help stop it, how we can spot it. And it's also about educating folks who work in our schools, folks who work with young people, understanding those who are vulnerable to being sex trafficked, figuring out how to help them feel a part of the fold so that they're not so vulnerable to this. And we also need a lot more resources to help kids who've been stuck in this system. I met someone this last week who's actually trying to build a home here in the Inland Empire for sex traffickers, victims who have gotten out of the business and who now need to rebuild their lives. And these are folks who don't have a family support network. They don't know how they can get out of that system. So we need to build more group homes like that where they can get the care that they need. That happens with the donation, the generosity of folks like you. It relies on policymakers so that we can reach out and help these young people. I was approached recently by folks who have developed a technology that can track social media postings and figure out where someone who is being sex trafficked is going to be dropped off by the gangs who run them. And police officers can be on scene there before or right when that person is being dropped off, rescue that person, and arrest those responsible. Technology is going to solve and help us solve a lot of these problems, and I'm excited about that. Any more questions?
I believe that is all.
Well, I thank you for the depth of the questions that you provided tonight. It's been a pleasure to share some of the research and work that I do with all of you. If there are questions we didn't get to, please feel free to post them below or send them to me on my Supervisor Janice Rutherford Facebook page. You all know how to find me at any of the social media sites, my county website, or you can call the office at 909-387-4833. Happy to serve any of you here in the 2nd District or in San Bernardino County. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'll talk to you soon.